Bleach is one of the many series that inspired several generations of manga yet to come even in the present day. Things like Jujutsu Kaisen, Kagurabachi, and Demon Slayer. It's definitely one of those rare shows you'll come to enjoy. With Ichigo Kurosaki being the main protagonist and starting as kind of a boy who gets lent his Soul Reaper powers and has a lot of potential to chapter 686, where he fights the son of the Soul King and the almighty Quincy, Yuha. Obviously, the power difference between Ichigo from the very beginning of Bleach and the final chapter is extremely significant. If you dropped Ichigo from his fight with Yuha into his fight with Fishbone the Hollow on the first episode of Bleach, he'd obviously one-tap him with pretty much fucking one punch, or even something less than that potentially. This is actually the idea that One had when creating the series known as One Punch Man, with the main premise of the story being what if we made the protagonist strong from the start, never having to encounter the issues that someone like Naruto or Goku would have ever faced. Instead, at the very beginning, he has the power he would have had at the very end of the series, being able to practically one-shot his opponents, save his friends, accomplish his goals, etc. I feel as though this idea is pretty interesting, seeing as how One Punch Man obviously isn't over yet, and he is an endgame level protagonist. I'm not even joking, that's literally Murata's quote. And the Bleach anime is coming to an end sometime soon, and Ichigo is finally reaching that level of power after several years of his anime going live. And although One Punch Man isn't completed yet, and Season 3 of the anime is confirmed to be in the works, I thought it would be interesting to compare him to arguably the strongest character in the Big Three. One thing I want to make absolutely clear before I even get into how these characters scale and how they stack up against each other, I want to preface that I'm not making this video, or really any video for that matter, to make fun of or even flame a series. Since a lot of people, anytime I even mention something they don't like about Saitama or even Ichigo, they typically immediately jump on the "you're biased" bandwagon without actually saying why. The last time we went over Saitama was in my video where I discussed Saitama vs Gojo, and I pretty much just went over his entire fight with Garo and the scaling involved in said fight. The primary basis before that fight for actually scaling his power was supported by actual demonstrations within the series, which revolved around his fight with Lord Boros. This is where we actually get the first FTL scaling in the series, and it's that Boros possessed the capability to kick Saitama to the moon at the speed of light or even faster, according to Murata. I will get into his speed a lot more later on, so don't worry about it. According to statements in the webcomic, Boros had the potential to obliterate the entire planet's surface with his full power. In the anime and various data sources such as the One Punch Man Blu-rays and Compass Guide, there were indications that he could potentially even destroy entire stars. This inference was derived from the Compass Guide, which employed the same term for Boros' power as planet or star in the original Japanese version. However, it should be mentioned that the translator decided to translate Boros' limit broken form as star, implying that he might at least be stronger or possess distinct capabilities compared to his base form, in which there are guides saying that Boros' base form should actually be capable of destroying a planet. What's more is the fact that Saitama, with his serious punch, could effortlessly nullify Boros' star-destroying attack. However, we would actually see a lot more intricate scaling with the introduction of Cosmic Fear Garo, who manages to tap into Saitama's immense strength, and as a result, Garo engages in the largest fight in the series. The consequences of their clash prove to be so cataclysmic that Blast finds himself enlisting in the aid of interdimensional warriors to transport the aftermath deep into space, as the very fabric of the Earth teetered on the brink of annihilation. The immense scale of this clash becomes apparent as a colossal cluster of stars, conceivably even millions of them, ominously vanish in the background. This pretty much just means that Saitama's potential to obliterate not only a multitude of solar systems or stars, but potentially entire galaxies, is essentially questioned within this chapter. The implications of Saitama's power extend far beyond the destruction of numerous solar systems or even entire stars, as he continues to grow exponentially stronger over time, which suggests that not only does he eventually acquire the capability to effortlessly accomplish such feats without relying on the help of Garo, but if you actually take the graph at face value and see how far he's truly surpassed him, he's surpassed him by a significant margin. Say that you drop this Saitama into pre-Blood War, he'd absolutely mop everyone in it without a question, as Ichigo, or characters that scale to Ichigo, don't really have fates that compare to Saitama and Garo's clash. And really, we only get to that point in the Thousand Year Blood War with the introduction of the self-proclaimed strongest Sternritter. And probably the biggest feat up until that point that I mentioned in several other Bleach videos is Gremmy literally creating outer space with nothing but his own imagination. Now, several people will argue with their last leg that he didn't actually create it, but only created a portal, where even that is just objectively wrong. We're given the feat in the manga, and not only does it not state it's a portal in neither the anime or manga, but the light novels double down on it not actually being a portal, instead actual outer space being created. Now, you might be able to argue this is multi-solar system due to the anime not showing a galaxy or whatever, but the actual author's intent is still blatantly there, with the galaxy being shown in the manga, and the expanse that Gremmy created literally being called outer space, which by definition is the physical universe beyond the Earth's atmosphere. It's very clearly just portrayed in a different way to the manga, but just putting simple thoughts into it doesn't really disprove there being galaxies within it. This feat is actually far inferior to what Yuha, the son of the Soul King, does towards the end of Bleach, where he finally gets closer to his goal of destroying the Soul Society, World of the Living, as well as the Hueca Mundo. The Soul Society is stated to be two sides of the same coin in comparison to the World of the Living, which is on top of the other realms or dimensions like the Hueca Mundo, Soul Palace, Hell, etc., etc. And we're actually given direct answers to how these places are reached within the series, and it's through these gates because they're places that you can physically travel to, which also means they should be different spaces and not necessarily the same. And using the light novels, the Soul King holds the universal flow to these three realms. We know these realms aren't necessarily planet-sized due to the Soul Society holding all souls that ever existed or will exist eventually, which also just means that the term world is interchangeable with realms or just these dimensions. Not to mention there is actual celestial bodies and stars within the Soul Society, and it also wouldn't be consistent because if they were the size of the planet, it simply could not hold these souls within it. Which also means that the World of the Living and the Hueca Mundo being called a world doesn't necessarily mean it's just that, as even the Soul Society is called a world, but as we went over, it isn't just that. Now, going back to Yuha's whole plan, if the Soul Society does indeed get destroyed, the universal flow of everything else also gets destroyed, and by proxy makes this feat Universal Plus, due to it being almost like a domino effect type of thing. Think of something like, say, Buhan kind of just screaming away dimensions and like almost collapsing the universe. It's kind of similar to that. This is also consistent with the fact that the Hyogoku is described as a hyperspatial realm, where hyperspace refers to a dimension that goes beyond the three fundamental dimensions of length, width, and depth. The first movie is considered canon because it is depicted in the manga, and Kubo effectively presents it in the Can't Fear Your Own World light novel, which is canon, and Ichigo is capable of destroying it. Ichigo also scales to Yuha, as we even see Yuha break Tensa Zangetsu in the future, implying that he even saw Ichigo just running his pockets, qualifying Ichigo for 4th dimensional or Universal Plus levels of power. Saitama, on the other hand, at least using certain scans, can potentially have infinite strength if you use things like this scan, where he's clearly displayed to have infinite strength. I want to make this absolutely clear before I keep going. I will grant Saitama this scan in whole, even though there are many things I can argue for this, like hyperbole, etc., etc., due to him growing from infinity and clearly having finite power, and contradicting his own limitless statements and blah 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 blah. I will just give him the infinite strength stat, as I don't want to make it even seem like I'm downplaying him at all, and I will just give him the benefit of the doubt. Now, what does infinite strength mean exactly? Now, we went over how Saitama and Garo's fight was even stated that they were attacking in the 3rd dimension. Now, having infinite 3D power isn't really anything when the person you're fighting has 4th dimensional power. For example, imagine we live in a world with only 3 dimensions, length, width, and height. In this world, we can measure things and describe their positions using 3 coordinates, which would be X, Y, and Z. Now, let's imagine a hypothetical 4th dimension called W is added. This 4th dimension would give objects an extra degree of freedom, allowing them to move or exist in ways that are beyond our current understanding. In the 3-dimensional world, we can think of the most powerful thing as having infinite power. It's like being the strongest and most influential within that three-dimensional framework. However, if we introduce a fourth dimension, which is W, it opens up a whole new level of possibilities. Objects or entities that exist or operate in the fourth dimension would have access to a greater degree of freedom and potential that goes beyond our current understanding. So when we compare infinite power in the three-dimensional world to what could exist in the fourth dimensional world, the power in the fourth dimension is always going to be infinitely greater. So meaning that even if you took the infinite strength Saitama scan at face value and said that he had infinite strength, he's still infinitely weaker, being high universal, whereas the likes of Ichigo, who can attack on a fourth dimensional level in his universal plus, due to reasons I mentioned earlier. So for actually scaling Ichigo's speed, there's several metas, and the main one I'm going to be using is through his multipliers. In the Can't Fear Your Own World storyline, Hikone possesses such incredible speed that time seems to come to a halt. During his confrontation with Kenny at the replicated Ryoka Palace, Hikone shines like a star. Even Grimmjow, who is known for his lightning-fast movements in his normal form, was unable to react to Hikone's speed while in the Kyogoku. It's worth noting that Grimmjow's base form is said to move at the speed of lightning, and when Grimmjow enters his resurrection state, he gains a 10-fold power increase, which is evident from his ability to match Ichigo while the latter is in Bankai, and overpower a Hollow Mask wearing Ichigo in his resurrection state. The Hollow Mask not only enhances the power of Bankai, but also boosts Ryoku's speed, offense, defense, and spiritual power. All aspects are improved when wearing the mask itself. These Seros within the Can't Fear Your Own World light novels are stated to be beams of light, and referred to as light in several guides. Even Uryu, who is capable of moving faster than his own shadow within the Soul Society arc, is calculated to be around relativistic plus, which Ichigo would scale to. Keep in mind, this feat is pretty much just equivalent to that of Saitama being able to see his own reflection, if not slightly less impressive than Saitama's feat. The same Ichigo would later then get blitzed by Byakuya. If we go by how fast you actually have to be to blitz someone, it'd be around 2 times at the very least. Whereas from this distance in the manga, it's been calculated to be around 7 times faster range. Byakuya then used his Bankai, which is stated to be a 10 times amp to all fighting stats, making him several times faster than that of Ichigo, who is relativistic, or about 1.5 times faster than light. Ichigo then uses his Bankai and speed blitzed that of Byakuya. If we actually use our lowballed speed calc, which is 2 times, then Ichigo would be 3 times faster than light, whereas if we use our 7 times calc, he should at least be 10 times faster than light. To which Ichigo uses his Hollow Mask, which is stated to be greater than the multiplier of Bankai. Using this statement, we can either assume it's a 20 times amp as a high ball to an 11 times amp as a low ball, meaning that this should at the very least be 110 times faster than light. Ulquiorra is capable of blitzing Bankai Ichigo, and is then shown being able to fight on par with Vizard Ichigo, who should at the very least be 110 times faster than light, which we can also scale Ulquiorra to. Ulquiorra then uses his release state, which is equivalent to that of Bankai, which is a 10 times amp on top of his already Bankai rivaling power, meaning that at this point, he should at least be 1,100 times the speed of light, or massively faster than light. Ulquiorra also uses a second resurrection, which we can assume to be a 2 times amp. Ichigo then unlocks Vasta Lorde and speed blitzes that of Ulquiorra, which we can now use 2 interpretations for this, which is either to assume Ichigo is now twice as fast as Ulquiorra, or 7 times via the calc. Going by the low ball, he should at the very least be 2 times his speed, meaning that we can now place Vasta Lorde Ichigo firmly in that 4,400 times faster than light, or MFTL plus ranges. Ichigo has the potential to receive a significant power boost known as Surpass Yami, who was previously the strongest Arrancar. By combining his Bankai with the Hollow Mask, Ichigo becomes much stronger than Ulquiorra in his second release form. It could be inferred that Ichigo has reached a level comparable to his Vasta Lorde form, as indicated by his markings on the mask, resembling those of his Vasta Lorde mask, and his substantial increase in power. Subsequently, Aizen attains a transcendent state that surpasses all Soul Reapers and Hollows at the time, including Vasta Lorde Ichigo, as his Ryatsu cannot be sensed by others while Ichigo's can. This is further evidenced by Aizen swiftly overpowering a combination of Bankai and Hollow Mask wielding Ichigo, who we previously concluded to be on par with or even superior to Vasta Lorde's state. Aizen then gets speed blitzed by Ichigo, which we're assuming is a 2 times difference, which would mean that Ichigo by this point should be 17,600 times faster than light, Ichigo is then capable of using Bankai Fullbringer, meaning that it's once again a 10 times amp off his aforementioned speed, or 176,000 times faster than light. True Shikai Ichigo is stronger than any previous form of Ichigo, which we might be able to say it's twice as strong, whereas he's obviously far beyond that, but we're lowballing a bit here, meaning that we can probably say he's 352,000 times faster than light. Ichigo can then utilize his hollowification, which is a relative amp to that of Bankai, which is 10 times off his previous speed, where he's then capable of stacking Bankai on top of this, which gives a crazy amount of 35 million times faster than light, just via multipliers. And in his fight with Yuha, his Bankai breaks and becomes his normal Zangetsu, meaning that it should be applicable to base Shikai Ichigo at this time, which is consistent because he's able to one-tap Yuha in his base form in the same way he could in Bankai, which we actually see it does remain his Shikai release, as we literally see his Shuhakusho being the same. For Saitama speed, his is mainly via calcs, which I will link in the description. I do think these calcs are reliable. King's height is approximately 1.87 meters, or 17 pixels in the manga. Garo's distance traveled within 1/5 of a total time frame. Based on these calculations, the speed is estimated to be approximately 78,769,841,825 meters per second, or roughly 262.7 times faster than light. During Saitama's fight with Garo, he's shown creating an entire light constellation on the Jupiter's moon of Io. The calc for this is around MFTL plus via Garo fighting Platinum S within this time frame, and using the fact that the shockwaves are frozen in time, you can actually get this feat to 275,125 times faster than light, or MFTL plus, and due to his dramatic increases in speed, he's likely several times faster than this, depending on the amps that he's given every time he adapts, which if we use this specific scan and say that each time he grew, he was growing twice as strong, which is pretty consistent due to how his growth is shown and displayed on the panel, which gets us to that levels of speed relative to that of Ichigo. I could keep going, but it really isn't necessary. I won't be going over the immeasurable speed meta as I've covered it already in Saitama vs Gojo, and I gave it a pretty thorough look, so if you want me to expand on that meta, consider watching it, as well as Goku vs Saitama if you're interested as well. So in terms of speed, they should at the very least be relative to one another, meaning that unless Saitama grows, there really won't be a speed difference, if anything. Speaking of Saitama's growth, you might be wondering how that actually plays out in the fight itself. Not only is it verbatim stated that the growing phenomenon is only happening due to his intense emotions, at least on this scale, I'm not saying Saitama doesn't only grow due to these circumstances, but it's only shown to be on this level due to his emotions from Genos' supposed death. Meaning that not only would Saitama not grow to this extent using out-of-character traits, but in character there's no reason for him to grow. Not to mention, Ichigo's Bankai broke and became his base Zangetsu, meaning that any prior multipliers mentioned during the Ichigo portion is applicable, meaning that he would only be able to contend with Saitama's growth via multipliers if Saitama grew at all, which he wouldn't. The gag argument for Saitama has been something since the glory days of the series, with pretty much no one actually being able to prove Saitama's skills over another character, so they immediately jump on the gag bandwagon in order to actually make a point, unknowingly using the statement blindlessly, pretty much. These people will usually argue things like his gag means he will always have a higher AP than his opponent, and take it as objective proof that Saitama actually wins. Now, the main issue with saying Saitama is a gag, and then following with said statements from one claiming he's a gag, is the fact that it doesn't necessarily apply outside of his own verse. And to make such a claim that this gag does apply outside of the One Punch Man verse would mean that you would face the burden of proof in the Hitchin's Razor when it comes to the gag applying outside said verse. Meaning that to say his gag means automatic win for Saitama results in you making a worthless point, as you cannot prove it. Let's take another gag character like Arale, for example, who is from the gag manga called Dr. Slump. Now, even for someone like Arale, her gag wouldn't necessarily apply outside of her verse, as well as the Dragon Ball verse, due to her not being shown using her gag-like abilities outside her own verse, as well as the Dragon Ball verse. And even that is because both series are both licensed by Akira Toriyama, meaning that the character and the verse's rules will only apply to said things, and not every character and verse. And because one, the author of One Punch Man, does not apply to Bleach or any other verse, except for like Mob Psycho, Saitama cannot one-punch characters who exist in Bleach, and to say that he can indeed pull up on someone like Ichigo or Yuha and just one punch them would result in the commission of a no limits fallacy and result in you having to prove an impossible burden. Hopefully this actually clears a lot of stuff up, and I want you to know that this isn't necessarily applied to just Saitama, but would pretty much just apply to every gag character out there. Everything aside, it's probably not the best thing to compare Saitama to Bleach or many other series like Dragon Ball for example. There's a significant difference in scaling in One Punch Man and Bleach, and it's something that's always been there for quite some time. But while we're on the topic, who do you want to see Saitama fight next? Is there a specific matchup you want to see that involves Saitama or maybe even Ichigo? If you have some ideas, let me know in the comment section. It lets me know that you enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy the video, be sure to like and subscribe as it helps me a lot. And it's free and you can always undo it at a later time. And bye.